In 2011, Japanese video game publisher Atlus introduced the world to Catherine, a puzzle game where you push and climb blocks while being drawn into a romantic horror story. In Catherine, you are presented with two possible romantic interests, Catherine and Catherine. Both are very attractive women, but depending on your actions and choices in the game, you can choose who you ultimately end up with. But wait.
Here comes a new challenger!
In 2019, Catherine Full Body was released. It's an enhanced version of the original game. They introduced Rin, a third love interest, to the story. This turned a love triangle into a love square, and gave players a difficult decision to make. Who do you truly love? Who was truly the best choice? Well, that is all subjective, but who was the best choice for Vincent? Before going any further, I will address that I will not be looking at the alternative endings introduced in Full Body, as one of the endings is more of a good ending for one of the love interests and not so much for Vincent, and the other one I will address later in this video. Vincent is a 32-year-old systems engineer living in a very vague American city, possibly in the early 2010s. He's living paycheck to paycheck as indicated in his scanty, bug-ridden apartment. Vincent is living a bachelor lifestyle. He spends most of his time drinking with his friends at their favorite bar, the Stray Sheep, and he's perfectly happy that he doesn't have any direction in his life or aspirations. This puts him at odds with his girlfriend Catherine, who wants to start a family together with him. Their conflicting goals causes problems between the both of them, and is a major story point of the game. Vincent values his personal freedom and tries to avoid making hard life-changing decisions. He's forced to make some hard decisions in the game that determines which ending the player gets. While these decisions are made by the player, I think how he reacts and responds doesn't necessarily reflect the player's personal values. He's a good friend, but doesn't seem like that great of a partner. When you first see Vincent with his drinking buddies, you can believe they've been friends for a long time for how he interacts with them. When you see him with Catherine, you kind of get an impression they're not exactly on good terms. Catherine is chastising him for not asking his boss for getting his overtime pay and not standing up for himself. She then brings up the subject of them finally getting married, but Vincent avoids the subject. She's usually telling him to get shit together, but in a much gentler way when they share the screen together. Vincent's interaction with Catherine is similar as well. She takes advantage of his weak will and walks all over him. He doesn't reject or stop her advances even though his relationship with her is wrong due to him already seeing someone. When he finally has the courage to end his relationship with her, he lets himself get beaten up by her. Granted, I don't think he should hit a woman, but he should have at least made an attempt to defend himself. Vincent and Rin's interaction together are a bit complicated. I'll go into more detail when talking about Rin, but Vincent's interaction with Rin is usually positive. Rin was found by Vincent when he was walking back home drunk, running into each other. Rin suffers from amnesia, and Vincent took pity on Rin and helped find a place and a job for Rin, which Rin is very grateful for. Vincent is shown to be very compassionate and very caring towards Rin, taking on what can be seen as a big brother role. Rin helps Vincent and motivates him to keep climbing in his nightmares. However, when Vincent learns about Rin's secret, it doesn't really go well, and I will go into detail when discussing Rin. One of the bar patrons you can talk to mentions that some men subconsciously look for women that will put them in their place. This is especially true with Vincent. The women in the game are the motivating force that pushes Vincent in the game. However, the same bar patron also mentions that some people can find romantic spark from someone that compensates for their flaws, in an effort to change themselves for the better. This also applies to Vincent. While it seems like I've been pointing out Vincent's flaws, he does have good traits. Vincent can give good advice to the bar patrons and his friends who are struggling with personal issues, ranging from dealing with past traumas to rekindling an estranged relationship. When he is cheating on Catherine, he is fully aware that what he's doing is wrong, and he does feel guilty about it. He just doesn't know how to handle it. It was a situation he didn't intend to get into. He doesn't want to be seen as a person whose value is only determined by his bank account, and doesn't want to be patronized. That's something I can respect. A person's individual value should not be determined by how much money they have, and they shouldn't be looked down upon based on that. Near the end of the game, Vincent does get a lot more self-confidence. He becomes something of a beacon of hope to the sheep that were suffering from the nightmares. He stands up for himself and straight up threatens the man causing him and his fellow sheep so much misery. Vincent is a man with vices and flaws, with no direction or goals in his life. He shows symptoms of depression and from how he lives and appears. The amount of alcohol he consumes and how messy his apartment is are signs of depression, according to the American Psychiatric Association and mental health professionals. He's trying to look for some purpose in his life, as shown from the many times across the game when he's sitting alone and reflecting on what his purpose in life is. And when Catherine decides to break up with him, He's wandering a city crying out loud, "What the hell am I supposed to do?" That's something a lot of people can relate to, as finding a purpose in life is often difficult due to various factors in the person's life. Vincent is just getting by in his life and with no goals or aspirations. That changes when his love interest comes into play. Let's start with his girlfriend, Catherine McBride. Catherine is a 32-year-old office manager at a clothing company. She's very mature, motivated, and a serious and intelligent person. She's a career-focused person who knows what she wants in life, the complete opposite of Vincent. She wants Vincent to be a more motivated person, be more focused on his career so they could potentially start a family together someday. She pushes Vincent to be more assertive and be more ambitious in his career. This is a point of contention between her and Vincent. He always tries to avoid having conversation with her on the topic. Catherine comes off as a controlling person. She takes full control of his finances when she sees Vincent constantly spending money on drinking and smoking and spending money on computer parts. She isn't openly affectionate with Vincent at the beginning and comes off as pretty cold throughout the game. You only see her being affectionate with Vincent in a flashback, where you learn she has known him since high school and she has a crush on him. They reunited at a high school reunion where Vincent comforted her after learning she was suffering depression, telling him that she was having problems dating. Vincent offers to give her dating advice, but he ends up falling in love with her. They've been together for about 5 years since. Seeing her friends getting married and starting a family on top of familial pressures for her to get married, she pushes Vincent to marry her and start a family. After seeing their flashback, you can understand why those two are together. It is a fairly romantic beginning for their relationship, but Erica, Vincent's friend from high school, believes that Catherine only started dating Vincent because of her domineering and maternal instinct wouldn't have left a drifter like Vincent alone. It is possible that could be the case, but I think it's more accurate to say that Catherine started dating Vincent because she was able to finally get with him, and she was able to find someone she could get along with, since she wasn't having any luck with the men she was dating. The text messages Vincent receives from Catherine are pretty compassionate and caring, usually telling him not to drink too much and take better care of himself. She apologizes to him when she upsets him and wants to see him in person more often. Catherine tells Vincent she's pregnant in an attempt to keep him locked in their relationship. This causes Vincent to be stressed out even more and feels obligated to stay with her for their child. However, Catherine much later tells Vincent she wasn't pregnant and it was a false alarm. She didn't tell him sooner because she was afraid he would have left her. What she did was terrible, and it's not a great way to maintain a relationship on the rocks. It's better to try to work things out together, in my opinion, but I'm not a relationship expert, so take that with a grain of salt. However, she does feel bad about lying to Vincent and does apologize. When Catherine meets Catherine, their confrontation does not go well at all. Catherine just antagonizes her throughout the entire confrontation, telling Catherine how terrible she was, how old she was, and how bad she was for Vincent. When Vincent steps in and tries to tell her that he was ending this affair, it doesn't go well. Catherine, feeling she was cornered and defeated, tries to find a knife to stab the other Catherine. This is pretty extreme, even if she didn't actually stab her. When they're both taken together to the nightmare world, Catherine asks if Vincent ever thought of her during the affair. He tells her yes. Vincent apologized to her for putting her through so much pain. When Vincent wakes up from the nightmare, he finds Catherine by his side, who has no memory of the nightmare. She tells him she was breaking things off, saying she knows Vincent is cheating on her and leaves him with an energy drink to make him feel better. If Vincent decides to go with Catherine, they reunite together at the Stray Sheep. The owner of the bar, Thomas Mutton, tells Catherine that Vincent never actually cheated on her, with Vincent's friends backing him up. He asks her to marry him, which they do a few months later. They tell each other they love each other, and that's about it. I think this ending is essentially the fairy tale ending, where everything works out in the end for almost everyone involved. There isn't anything wrong with it. I think it's perfectly fine. Vincent gets his act together and finally commits himself to Catherine. A positive change from how he was at the start of the game. Now, let's talk about the other Catherine. Catherine's a succubus and is technically ageless, but in the game she appears to be in her early 20s with her shape-shifting abilities. She appears to be the ideal woman to her prey, meaning whatever traits you find attractive in a woman, she'll take on that form to seduce you. In the Catherine manga, she has appeared as an African-American woman to Orlando, and a woman resembling Catherine to Johnny. I would imagine this might extend to personality as well, but I think it's more likely she's putting on an act. Catherine is very cheerful, charismatic, and a bright woman who is also the opposite personality-wise to Vincent. She is the embodiment of freedom in Vincent's eyes. She lives her life the way she wants, however she wants, and doesn't care what you think about it. While she's a succubus who's employed by the main villain, Thomas Mutton, she isn't evil. She actually pities her victims in the manga, knowing that they're fated to suffer from the nightmares. I think it's fair to say she's amoral when it comes to her victims. Catherine apparently works as a video game developer, according to the novelization of the game, but it is possible she's just lying, just to appear relatable to Vincent, who's a systems engineer. This is speculation on my part. However, her personal opinions on work is interesting. She believes work is a chain that holds people down, but is a necessary evil to keep modern society functioning. She always texts Vincent when she gets off of work, so they can both have fun. Catherine doesn't care about Vincent's vices, and actually uplifts him, telling him his lifestyle is perfectly fine, and she doesn't care how he lives. She's also more openly affectionate with him, and doesn't push him to get married. She sees marriage as a man-made creation, and not something given to humanity by God. While so far it sounds like Catherine is Vincent's dream girl, she's a young, busty blonde who shares a lot of his views with him. However, she comes with a fair amount of negatives. Catherine is fairly manipulative. When Vincent tries to break things up with her during Catherine's roots, she tells him she is fine with Vincent getting married and having kids, but she still needs him to be his number one. When that doesn't work, she starts beating the crap out of him, warning him that it was a mistake to break up with her. Catherine becomes one of the bosses in the nightmare world after you break up with her. Now, this is another negative aspect of Catherine that could be a result of her being a succubus. But from a certain point of view, Catherine can be seen as a sexual predator. She doesn't exactly get consent from Vincent, and he doesn't remember ever doing anything sexual with her. Now, this can be interpreted in two different ways. One is that Vincent actually did have sex with her, and doesn't remember it because he's always getting blackout drunk. And the other is Catherine is making him dreaming of him having sex with her. Both of these interpretations can fit into the narrative of the story. If Vincent decides to go with this Catherine, Vincent meets with Catherine at the Stray Sheep and tells her he's now a free man and has separated from the herd of society. He tells Catherine that he loves her and proposes to marry her. She doesn't really understand why a human being like him is wanting to be with a succubus like her. Before Catherine gives him an answer, they're interrupted by Catherine's father, Nergal, Lord of the Underworld. Nergal wasn't on board with any of this and was not happy at the idea of his daughter marrying a human. Catherine says yes. A few days later, Vincent and Catherine are seen together in bed, where she tells him she loves him. This also shows that Vincent's apartment was now relocated in the underworld. Then we get another small time skip where we see the both of them together, seemingly have taken over the underworld together, and Vincent having a harem of succubi. This ending shows the freedom Vincent wanted in his life. He didn't have to answer anyone. He had a harem and was now free to do wherever he wants as the new ruler of the underworld, alongside Catherine. This works for me as an ending for the both of them. Vincent and Catherine genuinely seem to love each other, even in a polyamorous relationship. I think this ending is alright. It makes sense within the confines of the game setting, and works as a power fantasy ending. Now that the Catherines are out of the way, let's talk about Rin. Rin is a very effeminate male whom Vincent believed was a female during most of the game. He's technically ageless and is a completely different species, being an alien, which isn't too out of place in the game. He has a sense of childish wonder that makes it hard for Vincent not to care about him. His apartment's filled with toys and random things he finds interesting, and he is also a very skilled piano player. As mentioned earlier in the video, Vincent runs into Rin, who is running away from an unseen creature, which is later revealed to be Rin's brother. Vincent helps Rin find a home and even a job as a piano player at the Stray Sheep, taking pity on him for not being able to remember who he was. Vincent doesn't know Rin's true identity, and this became a point of conflict later on. Rin and Vincent's interaction with each other are usually positive. Rin's piano playing wasn't good at first, but over time, it became amazing. When Rin is heckled by a drunk guy, Vincent was the first one who steps up to defend Rin. Vincent encourages and motivates Rin to improve. Rin becomes a sort of minor celebrity of sorts, with people sharing videos of him playing the piano to others. A rumor is spreading that listening to his music will grant happiness to people, and it's somewhat true. According to someone from Rin's species, the piano's power has the ability to change people's prejudices and bloom new possibilities. It's unclear if it's referring to the piano itself or some hidden ability Rin has. But it's fair to say that Rin has some effect on people, as his videos need to trigger the alternate endings for the game. Rin also helps Vincent and the other sheep in the nightmare world, using his piano playing skills to help them. Rin being there also motivates them to survive and stay positive in the nightmare world. When Vincent learns Rin's true gender, Vincent reacts in a way that's pretty bad. Rin was happy to tell Vincent the truth, but he slaps his hand away when he first tries to reach out to him. Rin, shocked by this, apologizes to him and runs away. Vincent, realizing his mistake, goes to the stray sheep in hopes of finding Rin. Instead, he finds Erica, who tells him to call Rin and apologize. Vincent does get a hold of him. He tells Rin that he didn't mean to hurt him. Rin apologized to Vincent for running away, and he did enjoy his time together, and he does like Vincent since the day they met. He wanted to tell Vincent how he felt about him, but didn't, knowing that he was ready in a relationship. Rin changed his mind after getting to know Vincent, and thought that he would have accepted him still, despite his gender. He says he doesn't plan on returning to the stray sheep, and wishes Vincent to be happy before he hangs up. Vincent goes back home, then he hears Rin's piano playing, believing Rin has returned. He goes to Rin's apartment to find Catherine stabbing Rin's corpse. Vincent freaks out and runs back to his apartment. He's also attacked by Catherine. He tries to defend himself from both Catherines, but he's saved by Rin, the real Rin. It turns out that the body was just an illusion, and the both of them are getting pulled into the nightmare world, and Rin is captured by Catherine and is being held hostage by Mutton. After Vincent overcomes Mutton's trials and rescues Rin, they both confess their feelings for each other and kiss, returning to the real world. This is where Rin tells Vincent about his race. Humans like Vincent have called his race angels in the past, and he was on Earth to save humanity from the nightmares, but Rin, losing his memories, caused him to forget the mission. They get interrupted by Rin's big brother, the Archangel, and he was here to take back Rin. Rin and Vincent tells Archangel that they love each other. Not taking this well, Archangel said Rin needed to be re-educated, and he was going to send a meteor to destroy all of humanity. Rin objects, telling his brother that humanity has a lot of potential, and they shouldn't be destroyed. Archangel challenges Vincent to prove humanity's potential, and promises not to destroy humanity, and that he will also accept the relationship. Vincent does overcome the challenge, and Archangel explodes into a tiny little alien. The aliens tell Vincent that they were responsible for humanity's miracles, and had intended to destroy humanity at some point. After some time had passed, Rin was playing the piano for a group of aliens, and Vincent was acting as his producer, wanting to help Rin spread his music across the galaxy. Then, after the credits, it is shown that Vincent and Rin have gotten married. I think this little ending is a bit over the top, but all things considering, it works within the game's story. So, after all of that, who is best for Vincent? Each of the love interests does have their own merits, and have some positive impact on Vincent, but some more than others. I will go what I think is the least best option first. I believe Vincent with Catherine is the third best option. There's nothing wrong with the ending, but I just don't see it working out for long term for Vincent. Even if he is a demigod in this ending. Let me explain. Vincent is now living in a world where he can essentially do whatever he wants, with Catherine by his side. He has a harem, and he's a ruler of the underworld. How is this a bad thing? He doesn't really grow from it as a person, or a demon in this case. In this ending, he's pretty much rewarded for bad habits and being a man-child. While it's true that he wanted to live like that, it's like asking a child if he wants to play a video game all day instead of doing their homework. Of course, you can go with the first option. With Catherine enabling and supporting all this, he doesn't really have a lover in her, just a playmate in my opinion. While they say they both love each other, it doesn't feel that genuine to me. Also, Catherine is pretty fickle and might just move on from Vincent and decide to overthrow him or find a different partner. Or if someone else comes up and just decides to overthrow him. I still think this ending works fine as a power fantasy ending, and it makes sense if you decide to pursue this Catherine. Now, why did I mention the alternate ending with Catherine where both of them are living together in the real world and married with children? I believe this ending is actually a dream that Catherine is putting Vincent under. It just feels too convenient that Catherine has time traveling or reality altering abilities all of a sudden. In order to trigger this ending, there are certain criteria you have to meet. The main trigger is sending Rin's music to her to listen. It's established that Rin's music has life-changing effects. That change on Catherine is her acknowledging what she's doing was wrong and feeling guilty about it. It doesn't mean she suddenly gets time traveling abilities. If you think I'm wrong on this, then please leave a comment below and tell me why. I'm more than happy to have my mind change on this. So, who was the best? Well, it was a very difficult decision to make, as I kept flip-flopping back and forth in the process of writing this video. But after much consideration, I feel confident to say that Catherine is the best choice for Vincent. Before I go into why, I'll address why Rin was a very, very close second choice. Rin is presented in an almost constantly positive manner in the game, showing almost no flaws. I understand why. It's because his race are angels, and they're depicted as flawless beings, usually. The only time something negative came up was when he revealed his true identity to Vincent, and even then, it mostly made Vincent look bad. The closest thing that you can say was a bad thing Rin did was not telling Vincent about him remembering everything that happened during the nightmares. But I think he didn't say anything because he assumed Vincent remembers as well. Rin being there almost every single step of the way during the nightmares and genuinely being in love with Vincent, flaws and all, is very touching. He knows under all that, Vincent is a good man deep down. In the nightmares, Rin was heavily concerned about Vincent's and others' well-being. He wondered if he could have done more to save lives if he was a better piano player, but Vincent told Rin that many more would have been dead if he wasn't there. This motivated him to be a better player. I also have nothing against LGBTQ relationships. I personally thought it was handled well in this game. How they fell in love was pretty believable, and it was genuinely a hard decision for me to place Rin in second place. So, why did I pick Catherine despite all of her flaws and her lying about being pregnant to Vincent and to keep the relationship going? Catherine wanted Vincent to become better. She stuck with him for about 5 years, even though he was stuck in a mostly dead end job. I think she could have easily found a different partner during that time, but she didn't. She was hard on him because she wanted him to do better for himself. The way she went about it might not have been ideal, but the love was there. Catherine lying about her pregnancy, that's something I can't justify. It's wrong for her to do that. She does apologize for it, but still, it's pretty messed up. I am willing to look past that since the both of them do make efforts to improve themselves for each other. I think that's something that should be praised. People struggling with personal problems, no matter how big or small, have issues seeking or getting help to make things better for themselves. Both of them are flawed people, but they clearly love each other enough to improve themselves for each other. Vincent needs someone like Catherine to keep him focused on what's important, and Catherine needs Vincent to help her, well, to chill out a bit. They're opposites to each other, and both of them can help each other to become better than who they were before. Thank you for watching, and please share your thoughts in the comment section. Was I right? Was I wrong? Let's have a discussion about it. Also, this is my second ever video that I put out, and I am thankful for you who made it all the way to the end. And, I hope I can earn your subscription and, yeah, accept more content in the future. Thanks.